and welcome. I'm Laurel Stewart, and here's what happened this week. Wednesday marked 100 days since Donald Trump began his second term, and the US president has declared the period to be a great success. But polls here in Taiwan show that concerns are high over his economic policies and what they might mean for the country. Chris Gorin takes a closer look.
To mark 100 days of his second term, U.S. President Donald Trump holds a rally in the state of Michigan.
And we're here tonight in the heartland of our nation to celebrate the most successful first 100 days of any administration in the history of our country, and that's according to many, many people.
That may not include most American people, as several recent polls show his approval rate in the low 40s, among the lowest for any U.S. president in their first 100 days. The discontent being felt in Taiwan as well. Only 33% of Taiwanese viewed the U.S. positively, according to a recent poll published by Brookings, a 20% drop from last July. The main driver of discontent? Tariffs. Trump has paused many of his global tariffs, including a 32% levy on most Taiwanese goods. But the U.S. is still threatening targeted tariffs on chips and electronics, Taiwan's key exports. That's despite Taiwanese chip giant TSMC pledging a record $165 billion investment in Arizona, the largest foreign investment in U.S. history. According to Taiwanese Public Opinion Foundation, nearly 82% of Taiwan's public considered Trump's tariffs unreasonable.
I think this is because of the tariff, right? The tariff toward Taiwan is so high that it makes people believe that it is punishing Taiwan. So I think there are reasons for ordinary people to doubt whether U.S. is reliable.
The new Trump administration has made some waves with its public Taiwan policies. In February, a webpage describing the U.S. policy towards Taiwan removed language stating that the U.S. does not support Taiwan independence, while adding a sentence that any solution must be acceptable on both sides of the strait.
It basically suggests that Beijing has a say in Taiwan's future, right? So it is hard to tell what exactly is the U.S. position right now in Taiwan Strait.
Meanwhile, China's military, the People's Liberation Army, or PLA, is continuing to put pressure on Taiwan, where U.S. arms sales have not been halted, but no major new deals have been announced. The U.S. has kept a 145% tariff on Chinese goods, sparking fears of a long-term trade war between the world's two largest economies. While the trade war could cause economic stress for both the U.S. and China, some say it could also have an unintended consequence.
I believe that economic stress and risk of social stability in China would make it less likely that Xi Jinping would use force against Taiwan, not more likely. That doesn't mean that PLA exercises would stop or that the rhetoric would change, the threats, all of the cyber attacks against Taiwan, the preparations would continue.
Despite the tensions, there may yet be hope for U.S.-Taiwan relations.
But I think that the U.S.-Taiwan relationship is likely to remain strong because it is very much in American interests to keep the bilateral relationship strong and to continue to develop those relations, whether they be in the economic, the diplomatic, or the military realm.
With tariff threats still hanging over the global economy, it appears that the only certainty about Trump's next 100 days is yet more uncertainty. Delphine Chen and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
May 1st marks International Labour Day, and in Taiwan, workers took to the streets to call for better workplace rights and protections. Tiffany Wong was there.
Thousands of people representing dozens of labor unions and NGOs marched on Labor Day around Taiwan's presidential office in Taipei. They included workers from the manufacturing, medical, and banking sectors, calling for better workplace protections, including changes to the Labor Standards Act for benefits like more flexible time off, more national holidays, and even 4-day work weeks. In 2023, Taiwanese workers ranked 5th overall for working the longest hours compared to other developed countries. And those in the care services industry say long hours take a toll on their mental and physical health and affect the quality of their work.
这近20年来都一样，都是工作9个小时到10个小时，所以在这个部分，你说要工作者有一个很好的照顾品质，其实是非常为难，然后身心负荷非常大的一种工作样态。
Stagnant wages is another issue that some essential workers say drive many out of the care industry.
我真的希望让全国的民众看到、听到。 我们护理人员真的没有低薪，我们没有像人家想象中的说我们是贪得无厌，都这么高薪了，为什么还要出来争取？我们平均薪资都是3到4万，这都是可以查的。
Another top concern, workplace bullying, after several high-profile incidents in recent years, including at the Labor Ministry itself, that have led to suicides. Taiwan's labor laws currently do not address reporting workplace bullying and harassment. But according to the latest poll, more than 70% of the public say they've experienced bullying in the workplace. And with these cases happening in the upper echelons of the government itself, these labor unions can't help but ask, how much will it take for the government to enact change?
但是这么多年来，我们认为政府并没有真正的去倾听基层劳工的声音，那没有去倾听工会的一个意见、想法，甚至于我们提出的很多的具体的政策措施，政府也都并没有采纳。
At a cabinet meeting on Labor Day, the head of the Labor Ministry's Occupational Safety and Health Administration came out with a list of improvements the government aims to make.
透过这次职场霸凌的法制化，我们希望要求企业能更加重视，然后积极预防，那提供劳工申诉管道，保障劳工的权益，以营造友善的职场。
我们讲了我们的这个第7项的诉求，我们今天第1到第7的诉求。
Also at issue, rights for civil servants. Under current law, civil service workers are not allowed to form unions for collective bargaining and are forbidden from going on strike. Labor advocates say this puts them at a disadvantage.
Taiwan has made strides in labor rights in the past few years, including improvements to the national holiday system. But without legal protections against workplace bullying, long working hours, and stagnant wages, workers here will continue calling for more action. Klein Wong, Chris Ma, Reese Ayers, and Tiffany Wong in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
President Lai Ching-te has promoted several high-ranking military officers. Lai thanked the new Major and Lieutenant Generals for their service and reminded them of the threats abroad and at home.
当前国际地缘政治形势变化快速，台湾更面临着威权主义的扩张所带来的威胁。除了日益增强的灰色地带侵扰，中共也不断利用各种渗透行为，意图窃取我们的国防机密。
Taiwan's armed forces have seen an uptick in spying cases in recent years, with several active duty and retired military personnel selling secrets to China. The president last month called for a crackdown on Chinese infiltration of the military and for bringing back military tribunals for those caught spying. At the ceremony on Wednesday, Defense Ministry spokesperson Sun Lifang was promoted to Lieutenant General, one of the highest ranks in the army. Sun was also promoted to head the Defense Ministry's administration office, leading the ministry's public communications.
我的母亲在过世之前，还在提醒我，要对国家忠诚，要做事情，要认真的去做事情，要去 尽自己的本分，那这一些我相信是在军旅生涯的历练过程当中对我的影响是非常大。
President Lai also credited Sun with improving the army's public image during his tenure as spokesperson. A cross-party delegation of lawmakers has been in the US Capitol this week. They've been meeting with American lawmakers and think tanks alongside the government's tariff negotiations with Washington. For more on their trip, Leslie Liao spoke with Iris Shaw, director of the ruling Democratic Progressive Party's mission in Washington, D.C.
Visit comes at a time when Taiwan is trying to deal with Trump's tariff on the country, which is a potential 32%. Is the purpose of this visit to negotiate trade?
Right. My understanding is that the legislative delegation is not here to negotiate trade. The trade negotiations are under the purview of Taiwan's government, and this visit is actually part of a long-standing practice of the parliamentary diplomacy. So it consists of members of the LY's U.S. caucus and the Foreign and National Defense Committee. President Lai has announced at the early outset of this tariff negotiation will be led by an interagency task force led by the Vice Premier Zheng Lijun. Both sides started the negotiation since April 11th. From what I heard, the discussion has been going well.
You said this isn't specifically geared towards trade. Historically, what have these parliamentary groups, these parliamentary visits to Washington, D.C. been about?
Many of the touch points between the U.S. and Taiwan delegation of such will likely to engage with their congressional counterparts as well as broader Washington's policy community. But I imagine this time around, as they say in the media, tariff and maybe security issues will come up in these type of discussions.
What do you think the U.S. policymakers will be looking to get out of these talks, or what kind of points would you think they'll be talking about?
I'll just point out Treasury Secretary Bessent mentioned there are 15 to 18 important trading partners that the U.S. will prioritize in the trade negotiations and tariff negotiations. And Taiwan is the U.S. 7th largest trading partner, so we're certainly in that ballpark. Overall, the U.S. is looking to reduce trade imbalance, reinvigorate U.S. industrial base, which also confirms to Taiwan's economic strategy as our major investment in procurement of energy and defense articles are already underway.
That was Iris Shaw, director of the DPP's mission in Washington, D.C. Taiwan is accusing China of being behind Somalia's decision to ban Taiwanese travellers to the country. Reese Ayres reports.
The African nation of Somalia has banned Taiwanese passport holders from entering the country. Taipei says it's Beijing's latest attempt to isolate Taiwan from the international community. The Foreign Affairs Ministry is protesting Somalia's decision, requesting they immediately reverse it. The Somali government said the ban was in accordance with a 1971 UN resolution that recognizes the PRC as the only legitimate representative of China to the United Nations, as opposed to the Republic of China, the official name of Taiwan. But Taiwan says it's a misinterpretation.
对于索马利亚政府错误解释联合国大会第2758号决议，并与所谓一个中国原则挂钩，图谋制造台湾隶属于中华人民共和国的假象，外交部也予以严正驳斥，并强烈谴责。
Taiwan is accusing China of coercing other countries to limit the freedoms of Taiwanese passport holders through things like travel restrictions. It's a newer tactic by Beijing and comes in addition to its attempts to poach Taiwan's few remaining official diplomatic allies, of which only 12 remain, having most recently lost Nauru in 2024. In reality, the impact of Somalia's ban isn't going to be huge. There aren't waves of Taiwanese tourists rushing there, but it's considered part of China's wider grey zone warfare. It's Beijing trying to chip away at Taiwan's sovereignty over time and isolate it diplomatically, often starting with financial incentives for smaller countries, particularly in Africa, where China has been trying to grow its influence. Currently, most countries, over 160, let Taiwanese passport holders in with preferential visa arrangements, essentially little to no visa application, though that number has gone down a few in recent years, after a handful of countries cancelled such treatment, which Taiwan's foreign ministry said could be the result of pressure from China. Still, Taiwan's passport remains one of the strongest in Asia, and still much stronger than China's. Karma Xu and Reese Ayres for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching Here's What Happened. Before we go, check out some highlights of the Dajia Madzu pilgrimage, which ended on Wednesday. I'm Laurel Stewart. Take care and see you next week.